Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Go with Microsoft. Before I introduce our speakers, I have a few quick things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We ask that you be kind and respectful to everyone, including our speakers. We want the reactors to be a place everyone feels welcome. Please feel free to ask questions using the live YouTube and Twitch chat. Please feel free to ask those throughout the session. Our speakers will be taking questions as we go. In the chat, I'll also be sharing some links to our Reactor meetup pages if you're interested in checking out what other sessions we have coming up, and to our Reactor survey. If you have a few minutes, we greatly appreciate your feedback. Today's session is being recorded and will be added to our Reactor YouTube channel in 24 to 48 hours. I will now pass it over to Aaron and Aaron.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
So what are we talking about today, Aaron?
I think we're talking about Go.
Cool.
Go at Microsoft, GopherCon, of course, which happened just at the end of last month, which I know you were even hosting. We were doing a lot of things there to share with the community. I imagine a lot of people on our live stream today of joining us maybe just after GopherCon, and maybe some of us brand new to GopherCon too. So talking about Go at Microsoft, open source, cloud native Go, lots of things to share with the community today. And we'd love to hear from everybody who's on the live stream today. If you have any questions, we'd love to chat more about those. There'll be some things we can do after the stream too, so feel free to hang around. We'll have lots of surprises in store.
Yeah, whether you're in on the Reactor channel, YouTube, Twitch, I think that's everywhere that this is being broadcast, but whatever your Learn TV. Yeah, so whatever your chat of choice is, throw your question in and we will get it answered for you. So both of us have done a lot of Go at Microsoft and are pretty involved with the Go community as well. So there's a decent chance we'll know the answer and we can answer right on the spot. So please do feel free to throw your questions in the chat.
Fantastic.
So Aaron, let's introduce ourselves a little bit and then let's talk about GopherCon.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so both myself and Aaron I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft on the open source and Go and cloud native focused teams. So we've been doing Go at Microsoft coming up to 5 years and lots of Go before that. So we span all of those different things inside of cloud advocacy with an engineering focus, which includes open source projects and other areas like that.
Yeah, I'm also Aaron. I'm a colleague of Aaron's. We're on the same team and we have the same first name. I focus a lot on Kubernetes. So I write a lot of Go for cloud native and Kubernetes technologies. I've been doing Go since, I believe, like 2012 or something like that. Late 2011, early 2012, something like that. And I've been at Microsoft since 2017, focused on Go. And it looks like we have our first question from Engin too. Engin, I hope I pronounced your first name right there. Engin says generics 1.18 and then put a smiley emoji. So I'm going to assume, since the burning question has always been, what do you think of generics 1.18? I'm going to assume that's what it is. Yes. Aaron, why don't you take this one? I can throw stuff in after if you want, but
I think this leads us into GopherCon. I think there was a big question going into GopherCon. Everybody was excited to hear from Go, and the first talk live from the Microsoft Learn TV studios there was from the Go team, and they talked about generics. And if you haven't seen that talk, go and watch it because it's one of the most straightforward and well-balanced introductions to generics I've seen, and it lets people know when to use it. And I think generics have been a fantastic thing for Go. They've been much anticipated. I'm very excited about them. I know our SDK teams and others are very excited about them. We've actually prioritized certain things around being able to use generics ultimately. And I think it's going to be a great thing for the Go ecosystem. I know Aaron is also a huge fan of generics. You've delivered some internal talks and things, and even like myself and others about various aspects of it across different languages. I remember picking up generics for the first time when I was a .NET programmer, and they're going from 1.1 to 2.0 and seeing it come into that ecosystem first. And I think we've got to see a lot of similar excitement inside of the Go community too. What are your thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm also pretty excited about them. This has been a work in progress since long before 118, and I think I look at it sort of from the theoretical, from the technical, and from the community standpoint. Theoretical, this generics implementation is one of the most advanced that's out there. It's the syntax is fairly simple, especially in the edge cases, and that follows for Go. Go tries to be very powerful and very simple, but the implementation of it has taken learnings from just about everything out there, and I'm really excited to see that. Go has been really good at being one of the most advanced technologies out there for writing software while staying very simple, and this is no exception. And then from the community standpoint, this, as I said just before, I mean, this has been in the works for, I think it's been at least 3 years that this has been in the works in some shape or form. And nothing about it has been closed. Generics has been in the open, designed in the open, implemented in the open, everything in the open since the Go team started considering implementing it. And that's also great to see. So I'm very excited about it too. We're going to see generics come into the Kubernetes world. It's going to be of great use there. We're going to see it come into the Azure SDK world. It's going to be of great use there. There's going to be a billion, here, you heard it here first, 1 billion other great uses of generics. I think it's a great thing.
And that talk was by Robert Griesemer and Ian Lance Taylor as well, and that's on the Go channel, the Go GopherCon channel, and you'll be able to watch that as well. We'll share out a bunch of links later on. I do see another question here from Johanan Edicula, asking, roughly when can we expect generic support in Microsoft SDKs, especially interfacing with Azure? Now, I've spoken to a number of folks on the SDK team, and they, as I said, they've been very excited about it. I would say very soon. You can expect that. Obviously, the release cadence and so forth is up to the team, but we've been anticipating it, preparing. We know where they'll be most useful, and definitely you'll see something popping up there quite soon.
There's a couple other questions and interesting comments in here. Full Snabel, I hope I got that sort of right, says generics are the first step towards monads. I'm totally into it. I used to do a lot of functional programming, so that would be amazing. And then Jose Silva says, when should we use Go and when should we use Rust? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say two things. One, use the right tool for the job.
Yes.
Go and Rust have a lot of overlapping use cases. And I think if you start with one, it's fairly likely that it will still be a good fit for your use case if you're considering which one to use. The second thing is going a little bit deeper. Technologically, Rust compiles to something more lightweight, so to speak. There's no garbage collector in Rust. There's no concurrency runtime in Rust, like there is a concurrency runtime and a garbage collector in Go. So Rust might end up being a better use case for things like embedded applications, where the footprint has to be a lot more lightweight. So you can kind of use that as a heuristic to say, I'm starting a greenfield application that needs to be on IoT devices. I'm probably better off using Rust in that case. But if you're building an online database that's going to be distributed across 100 nodes in the cloud, Go might be a better use case for that. So I hope that helps, Jose.
I'll share my thoughts as well.
Yeah,
So,
please do.
Especially when you talk about things like IoT use cases, I think you'll find that Go is you can use the right tool for the job, and there are various axes to that. One of them might be community. So if you're in the cloud native community, Go is the sort of de facto language of the cloud native community. You're working with Kubernetes. You have all the libraries across all the major public clouds. You have very mature libraries and SDKs for doing a bunch of the things, network programming. in the vast majority of cases, I think you'll find that Go has the performance and the safety and all of those things that you would want, and also the productivity. It is a very easy language to pick up. And if you want to go to something like IoT or even a WebAssembly or something, you can look at also still writing Go for something like TinyGo and running Go in small places and that kind of thing. I often, people talk about Go or Rust, but I often say it's often Go and Rust. If you have the time, definitely learn both. They're both fantastic languages. I have colleagues working in Rust inside Microsoft. Rust is very often used in places where there is a need for security, often compared with C++ and trying to remove certain classes of bugs in very security sensitive code, where security is the number one thing. And it's also very native to the WebAssembly world, for example. There's a lot of tooling and a lot of things which is quite mature in that space as well. So it does really come down to the use cases. There is overlap. They're both systems programming languages and very modern and a pleasure to use. Definitely learn both if you have time, and I think you'll enjoy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the community there too, because that's a consideration. At least for me, I know I don't take that into consideration early enough in my decision process, and it's extremely important. Obviously, if you're working on open source,
and they're two very welcoming communities too. You can benefit from being in both communities. It's just it's fantastic. It's good to see.
Yeah. Another question from Barack. What were you guys mainly working on or with before Go? Aaron, you start, because you have an interesting past before.
Yes.
Go.
So before joining Microsoft, we're primarily working on Go and Cloud Native and some Python and other things. I've been working on Go, even one at another company, serving across the multiple clouds, building tooling and systems and CLI tools and APIs and all sorts of things to support workloads and so forth in the cloud for customers consuming the cloud. But prior to that, I'd also been using Go in my e-commerce business. So I ran an e-commerce business for about a decade down in New Zealand. We don't have, at the time, Amazon or other major competitors and things. We're selling IT hardware, software, and consumables. And the last iteration of my pretty much the entire e-commerce stack platform, right from the accounting to the front end, was rewritten in Go. I'd done a lot of Python before that, so I came to Go primarily from Python. I'd also developed a lot in .NET prior to that. So I did a lot of .NET, MVC, web front-end API sort of things, and then delved more into systems programming, but also building services and things for e-commerce. But I've used Go for SDKs, CLIs, web APIs, a whole bunch of different things, but then a lot of Python, where there's a lot of overlap between the two, and also other things like high-performance trading systems and other stuff in various languages, including going back to .NET. And prior to that, even early web languages, PHP and other stuff prior to being in that space.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of breadth in your history of technology history there. It's pretty cool.
Yes. Yes, I built a lot of things for clients with a sprinkling of things across so many different industries, and you tend to land on the things which are useful in many different scenarios. So that's one thing I find both Go and even Python useful for.
It goes back to right tool for the job. Sometimes the right tool isn't the right technology tool, but it's the right sort of tool for the team, or it's what the team already has investment in, or whatever. So that's definitely true. For me, the language I was working with immediately before Go was Scala. That's how I got into a lot of functional programming stuff. And right at the end of that job, we started working a lot with Haskell as well. And then since we were using Scala, it's a JVM language, and there are a lot of libraries in Scala that are actually written in Java, and then they have a translation layer. So a little bit of Java there too. And before that, I was using PHP and C. This was at an online gaming company, so I was doing a lot of data processing stuff with C and C++. The first language I ever learned was actually C++. I wrote a lot of Mac apps. This was before Objective-C was big in the Mac world. We used the Mac foundation libraries called Carbon. They were written in C. And so we did a lot of C++ and C, writing Mac UI apps for like Mac OS X, like 10.0. like the very first OSX. So those were the days. Those were fun. And then, yeah, over the years, I've kind of touched a lot of different languages. I wouldn't say I'm very expert at any of them, but I've touched a decent amount of Python. I've done a lot of PHP, a bunch of C++. I think I probably forgot all of it. That probably touches most of sort of the primary languages I've done in the past as well.
I've definitely forgotten almost all the C++ I learned. It was the first language I tried to learn, but I don't really count it because I didn't feel I ever got productive. I was quite young at the time, but PHP and the web was what got me productive and into other languages. And of course, F# and functional programming, that was a lot of fun alongside C# and all those things. There's a range over that, but
I should learn F#. I don't know enough of that.
Everybody should learn F#. It's fun.
Yeah. So Muhammad has a question. Does Microsoft support Go and Azure DevOps, like building Go and pipelines, etc.? The short answer is yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Aaron.
So we have it in Azure DevOps. There are pipelines for building Go in pipelines. We've had those for quite a while. Since my first GopherCon actually in person was about 2018. We had folks from Azure DevOps there, and they're building out those things back there. If you're using GitHub Actions, there's a very rich ecosystem for building things in Go inside of GitHub Actions as well, which is fairly often used and fairly similarly. And we even have some labs for that, for building things in Go or building GitHub Actions with Go, which we'll share a bit later as well. But that's definitely across all our CI/CD portfolio, from DevOps to pipelines. You can absolutely build your Go apps and do all those things.
Yeah, I mean, we have, in both cases, whether it's DevOps or Actions, getting it working is actually pretty easy too, just because really all you need is the Go binary, the Go tool chain, and that's a binary, and you can run Go build. And there's a lot of wrappers in DevOps to make that easy, a lot of wrappers in GitHub Actions to make that easy. But at the core of it, you're just running the Go tool. It's pretty cool to have such a simple workflow that you can port between your local machine into the cloud, into DevOps, into GitHub Actions, and so on. I really think that's a massive benefit of Go.
And there are some great tooling in that space as well, from things like inside Actions, like matrix builds, being able to build across different architectures and pipeline platforms and things like that. And there are native Go tools for that. I see Johanan has saying, by native Go, I mean being able to create actions for others to use, completely written in Go, similar to how it's possible to create them in JS. This has been something that's popped up a few times. And this is something a colleague of mine, David Justice, and I delivered a workshop on last year. And we also have a lab for this year where you can create an action in Go using GitHub Actions, building it into a container. There have also been some other efforts around native Go and Actions, which they're not sort of official or baked in or anything like that yet. But definitely continue to watch that space. And we'd love to chat more with you about that. But if you look interested in our labs, you can go to aka.ms/go-labs, and you'll see one for Cloud Native Go with Kubernetes Event-Driven Autoscaler and HTTP, one for Go with GitHub Actions, and another one for container apps, which will be something we'll talk with in a little bit, which is great for Gophers.
Fule Snabel says Skal has an unfairly bad rep. It's pretty decent. I agree. It's a little difficult to work with the tool chain, in my opinion, but I think it's a good language. And also, everyone always says they should learn F#. I've noticed that too. Just haven't gotten around to it, but I've noticed a lot of people say that. It is a really high quality language, a high quality tool chain. I mean, it's in the .NET ecosystem, which is second to none, I think, in terms of runtimes and so on. So, yeah.
I will say it's surprisingly approachable, and the amount of code. So you've got, if you're familiar with the .NET standard library and everything, you've got all that at your fingertips. The tool chain is quite familiar. It was very open source and community focused from the beginning, which has been fantastic. One of the things I really liked about it. And the amount of code you might write to solve something in a given domain is quite short. You might see something looks like a page of code or a screen of code that solves problems very elegantly compared to perhaps other approaches. So it's a fun language to learn from that perspective, and you can use it for small, interesting problems very quickly. I see a question here from two questions. So we'll start with Fang Chung. who says, currently AKS can run WebAssembly with Crustlet. If we want to build a web API with WebAssembly, can we do that? And what's the language you guys prefer to?
Can I take this one?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Crustlet is available on AKS, yes, for sure. Building a web API with WebAssembly, it is possible, but the standards to do it are young and not quite stable, I would say. I'm not an expert in this space, but my understanding is that the standards to do that wouldn't call them stable. You can do it though. I of course would prefer to use Go. You can use TinyGo to compile direct to WebAssembly, a very small binary. I guess it'd be called a WebAssembly module that doesn't contain the runtime that's built in. Like you would have if you compile with the standard Go toolchain. So TinyGo uses LLVM to do that. There are some limitations, though, to the code that you write that gets compiled with TinyGo, so keep that in mind. But either way, you can use the standard Go toolchain to compile to WebAssembly, and then you can also use TinyGo to compile to WebAssembly. So it's kind of your choice on what your workload is, what type of web API, and so on. But I would totally prefer to do Go because I love Go. And you kind of have two options. You can use TinyGo or you can use Go to compile your code into your WebAssembly module and then go ahead and run it on AKS.
Yeah. And I will say that we have a product inside of, an open source project inside of Deus Labs, which is focused on WebAssembly and all the languages that are supported for that for web applications. And you should look at things like WasmTime and Waggy, web application gateway interface, which brings some of that sort of familiar HTTP concepts and so forth to your WebAssembly modules. So that seems to be one of the options. But like Aaron said, the standards and so forth haven't quite settled yet. There's a lot of very fast-moving work happening, and a very exciting work happening in that space as well.
Yeah, and that's a place you can get involved, Tang. Waggy is the WebAssembly gateway interface. It's kind of like, I'll probably offend someone by saying this, but sort of like CGI, but made.
I think it says it in the README, so I think you're fine.
Okay, good. I'm fine. That's completely open source. Just search for under GitHub, search for WAGI. Completely open source. They're always looking for contributors and maintainers. So, if that is something you're interested in, building the foundations of WebAssembly, web APIs, feel free, go get involved at the repo.
And we'd love to hear from anybody doing this stuff. If you're using Go or TinyGo in this space, or you're interested, you have a use case, we'd love to chat more about that. This is a fascinating area, and it's
So Stewart also has a question, and thank you all, by the way, for all these questions. This is great. We weren't sure if we were going to get a lot of people. We weren't sure if we were going to get a lot of people asking questions either. So this is great. Stewart says, which development environments do you consider the best for developing and testing apps written in Go? Aaron, you have a lot of opinions here, so I want to hear from you.
So I love them all. I've used and loved all the development environments. The one I like above all of them right now, not just because I'm at Microsoft, well before I joined Microsoft, is Visual Studio Code. Ultimately, it is my favorite, and I'll share some things I like about various approaches. It's a fantastic IDE and lightweight editor. It provides you that lightweight experience with the VS Code extension for Go and also the Go Please language server. So a lot of things have changed over the arc of time inside of the IDEs for everything from completion to refactoring and all of the tooling required to support Go development inside of these things. And way back when we first open sourced Visual Studio, the Go extension for Visual Studio, which was originally developed at Microsoft and originally developed somebody on this before that it became an official Microsoft project, was one of the first things we launched alongside Visual Studio when we open sourced it. So it's had a long history there. It developed over time. When Go modules came along, there was the need for the Go Please language server. which has matured very, very fast. So it's a fantastic project inside of the core Go ecosystem. And we donated the Go extension for Visual Studio to the Go project. So this is supported in lockstep with the language server. So this is a fantastic option. It's my favorite tool chain, especially because I touch a lot of other languages, a lot of other things, from everything from Markdown and Python and a lot of Bash, a lot of Kubernetes stuff. It's my place to land everything, and I find it very productive. There's a Delve debugger. All of that stuff is just top notch. I do frequently use other options as well. I quite like using the Go Please language server for, this is not for the faint of heart, but I like using it with Vim and NeoVim. It does work with extensions inside of that. So you can actually spin up something in the cloud and access it over a Blink Shell terminal from your iPad or something like that and still get completion and lots of other things. That's not for the faint of heart, but if you're a Vim user, absolutely try that. We also
We're
have
all the
VS
Vim
Code.
users. We're all the Vim users.
users.
Chime in if you're a Vim user.
Primarily or secondarily, we all love Vim as well. I even use VS Code Vim extension, which is fantastic inside of VS Code a lot. So I feel comfortable in both ecosystems. And then for other areas, there's other editors and other IDEs and JetBrains and so forth that have good, wrap around, heavier IDE experience, which is good for people who prefer a certain set of tooling and other things like that. So the bottom line is we have multiple mature options for people and it's really just a matter of taste. But my favorite is absolutely Visual Studio Code and has remained so for a long time. So
me too. Yeah. Since 2010, I was writing PHP in VS Code, not 2012, I think. Something around a long time ago. I was writing PHP there before Microsoft. I wrote some Scala in there too. I would agree. I think VS Code, I'm not going to say it's the best. It's the best for me though. It makes, I'm used to it. It makes the most sense for me. But if I couldn't or didn't use VS Code for some reason, I would go with Goland. I think it's a really solid product as well.
I know a lot of people use it. It's got a good number of followers who are, they feel very productive in that environment. The great thing is we've got multiple first-class options in the Go community, and often you find with a lot of newer emerging languages or things, you might not have the language server support. You might have something that uses, the protocols, the language server protocols. So you might have support in VS Code and things like Vim and NeoVim, but with Go, we have all of that. So that's one thing that makes it really productive as well. Yeah.
And Yohanan says, I find any of the editors that support the LSP protocol, or the LSP, language server protocol, to be more than sufficient. LSP has been a wonderful game changer overall. I would agree. This is kind of an example of, why community matters, actually. I'm going to take it in that direction. It's the community. The community has kind of adopted this protocol that is a generic way for editors or human interfaces to communicate with daemons that know about a code base or a set of code bases. Now that that's out of the way, now everyone can build to the same protocol and we can focus on the next level experiences in editors. And that's great. So now Goland, I don't believe Goland uses LSP yet.
Goland is a proprietary thing, but VS Code and things like NeoVim and also Vim has extensions for it. Have all of those things. That part is fantastic. And I remember when it was all first released, all of the stuff was shelling out to binaries, like the Go tool chain for working with all of this stuff was shelling out to binaries. It was slower. It didn't have the caching and all the stuff that they can now pull into Go Please. And we've reduced the number of tools and dependencies that have been required out there to be able to work with Go, and that helps people move in lockstep as the new Go tooling comes out. New Go releases comes out, new Go features come out.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the editor, there's Go Please, and that we don't have to worry about how is that going to interact with the editor anymore. You build your functionality. You have a standard protocol that you just build to. You don't have to design anything anymore. It just takes a piece out of the dev cycle for the editor developers and for the language server developers. And now, we programmers across the Go ecosystem get a much better experience. And this is wonderful.
And the Go team is very open about that as well. I just saw Paul Jolly online yesterday talking about the first meeting for 2022 of the Go Tools team to get feedback from the community and all of that side of things. I think it's been it's matured. The approach to building these tooling has matured as Google has built that out and decided to involve the community, and we've found the hard problems to solve. So I think it's very exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about GopherCon.
Yes.
keep your questions coming, by the way.
We'll continue to pick up on those as well. It's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So GopherCon was at the beginning of December. It was all virtual, but we had a bunch of the speakers come into the Microsoft Learn TV studios up in Seattle, in Redmond, to be specific, do their talks live. So this was a first for GopherCon, and these are interesting times. So we weren't going to have 2,000 people all come to one big convention center somewhere and then give all the talks live there. So we figured we'd do the next best thing, which is have all the speakers come, almost all the speakers come, do their talks live in a TV studio essentially, and then broadcast those talks live all out to the internet for free, which is what we did. So how did you think it went?
There, Aaron.
Yeah.
I will pause you there. Phil has asked a question. GopherCon. Some people might not know what GopherCon is. What is GopherCon?
Sorry about that. Yeah. So GopherCon is there are a lot of Go conferences around the world, but GopherCon is the biggest one. So this year was in late December, or last year, I guess it was in late December 2021. We had about 5,000 people register this year to watch it on YouTube or Twitch or the Learn TV site. And it's just generally it's a general interest conference for all things Go. We had talks about language changes, like we were talking about generics before. We had talks about tooling. There was a talk I remember pretty vividly about the new debugging system for Go. We had talks, of course, we had talks about Go Please. We had talks about use cases, how different people are using Go at their companies or in their jobs, and really everything else under the sun. It's great fun every year, in my opinion. And Microsoft, including myself and Aaron W., you are also, we're both, really deeply involved with the conference, which is probably partly why we love it, I think.
So you're on the CFP committee. You are hosting the entire conference live on the live stream, and a lot more besides. So that was very deeply involved. I helped run a lot of our live content. We had people from across Microsoft, myself and others, running labs, workshops. We had people from across Microsoft and different teams, from the SDK team right to the docs team, who documents and write technical writers, write for Go at Microsoft, sharing things. Open source projects such as Dapper, which is called the Distributed Application Runtime, which is one of my most successful projects written in Go for the cloud native community, and across all languages and across all platforms, nothing even primarily Microsoft. You can run Dapper anywhere, as well as other things like our cloud native things like Kubernetes event-driven scaler and other Kubernetes related things like the cluster the cluster API provider for too many acronyms. The acronym for this one is called CAPZ, and it's the cluster API provider for Azure inside of Kubernetes, and that's something that is written in Go. It's maintained by Microsoft. It's for the Kubernetes community, maintained by a great friend of mine, David Justice here, and it allows you to stand up Kubernetes clusters without any external tooling or anything like that, and it's really fantastic.
Yeah, so we Microsoft, we were there in a big way. We were a sponsor. We provided the Learn TV studios to do all the live stream stuff. We hosted speakers to come in and do their talks live, and then, as you mentioned, we gave was it 3 workshops I think.
It was 2 a day, so it ended up being about 6 live sessions, 7 posts, 7 actually was some of the others. So every day we had at least a couple of live sessions where I recognize some of you folks in the chat today. You may have been joining us because of that. And also on the GopherCon Discord, we were chatting with folks on the GopherCon Discord. If you were live, you might have been there in the Gopher Town. We were able to sort of run around in that virtual world. And even in our Microsoft open source Discord, we were able to do the labs and things hands-on where gophers can come along and try some of those things out.
Nice.
That was a lot of fun.
So yeah, we'll put the link. So all the talks are available free on YouTube. We'll put the link in the show notes. Actually, maybe we can put it up now. I will try to get it out there now.
Yeah, that's the Gopher Academy YouTube. So the Gopher Academy is the YouTube channel which hosts all the videos for GopherCon starting this year. Sorry, not starting this year, but from this year, going back many years. So it's a fantastic learning resource for gophers of every stage.
Yeah.
And it's for new gophers, for experienced gophers.
Yeah. Yeah. So Aaron, all the talks are up there. They're all free on YouTube. What were some of your favorite ones? This is the question.
I think I mentioned my favorite one first and foremost was the generics one because it was just so crisp and such a great introduction. I think it was a great way to kick off the conference. There are a number of others that somewhat skip my mind. Some of them were about one in particular I tweeted in my live stream was about bringing teams to Go and talking about teaching new gophers from within a company, not having to go out and hire a whole bunch of people from the ecosystem and some of the challenges. So a lot of this was about the human side of Go development inside a company, inside an existing organization. We had everything there, right from the deep technical to the very human and real logistical aspects of it, which was fantastic.
Yeah. We had also one of my favorite things about every GopherCon is the lightning talks.
Yes.
So if you are ever sort of thinking, I've been getting into Go, I'd really like to get more involved with the ecosystem. You can speak at GopherCon. Every year we have a call for proposals, and anybody in the world can come and submit a proposal for something they'd like to talk about. But the talks are either 25 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on the type of talk that you choose. And that can be for the full talks. Yeah. And that can be putting on a 25 or 45 minute talk can be a large undertaking. And, it can, depending on how you like to do it and how fast you want to do it and what your, obligations are in life, it can take a long time. But there's a third option, which is lightning talks, and those are 7 minutes long. And those are a really great way to get involved without the huge upfront time commitment, on the very first time you want to speak about Go. So because they're 7 minutes and we had lightning talks, I believe it was every single day of the conference. Yeah. There were a ton of topics that people brought to the table, a ton. So, it was like you said, Aaron, we had everything from bleeding edge, brand new technology to experience reports and all the way down to, the human element of like, how do we get people involved with Go? And what is it like to write your very first line of Go and everything from that all the way on the spectrum, from the human element to the deepest technical topics you can think of. So I would totally recommend, those are on YouTube too. I would totally recommend checking those out.
Yeah, one I'd recommend to people if you're interested in TinyGo is Ron Evans is giving an update on TinyGo, and he's updating various things and features inside of the open source project. But especially when you're live there and in person, they have this great energy and this very informal feel, and everybody knows they go up there with a certain amount of time, and I would imagine there's sort of less maybe anxiety or nervousness. It's very much a fun atmosphere, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back to GopherCon in person one day soon. If anybody on the stream, I highly recommend it. It's absolutely my favorite conference. Don't tell the other conferences, but it's just a great community. So and there's multiple ways to get involved. There are also GopherCons outside of the GopherCon in North America, which is the GopherCon, but there are GopherCons in all different countries across the world which are hosted. So you might have one regional to you, which can be, or other Go conferences like in Canada and Toronto. Here we have a GoCon Canada, which was run for the first time a couple of years ago now. And there's a broad Go community across the world.
Yeah, I think
Engin
there's a
says,
GopherCon in all the continents except for Antarctica. If anyone wants to start up an Antarctica GopherCon, don't call me. It's too cold. So there's we have another resource here. This is this aka.ms link. It is more about how Microsoft specifically was involved with GopherCon, but that has content, related to the workshops that we did, stuff related to how, like, what Microsoft offers for Go, how to run Go on Azure, that kind of thing, so on and so forth. So definitely check that out as well if you're interested in specifically, what does Microsoft offer for Go. We do have a lot on offer. I think we sort of mentioned a little bit. We've mentioned things like the Go SDKs, but a couple of things we haven't mentioned, Aaron, is sort of like how, I guess, two things. How do you run Go on Azure? And then also, like, how do we use Go internally to power some of our services? I think we should spend maybe a couple minutes on that.
Yeah, and I'll start with the breadth, sort of the breadth of that as well. So if you drop into this repo, aka.ms/GopherCon-2021, you'll see a few different things there. You'll see Gophers of Microsoft, which gives you just sort of a sample of some of the engineers who showed up at GopherCon. And all of these people would love to still talk to anybody in the Go community. If you see somebody's building something or an area that you're interested in, absolutely reach out. Go at Microsoft is driven by its internal community, and we have so many people who both work on it full time and other people who don't necessarily work on it full time, but are still very passionate Gophers inside of Microsoft. And they support all of these things from, yes, obviously our SDKs for our Azure services, and we have a new batch of them sort of refreshed and built to a new, very accessible approach, which is driving through our new sort of SDK standardization across all languages, which is fantastic. And it works for things like Azure Resource Manager and Key Vault and blob storage and table storage and databases and our queuing like Service Bus and so forth. So these are SDKs and things you can try out as a consumer. We have lots of services that Go developers use. So we talk about all our cloud native services, such as Azure Kubernetes service, our container registries, our Azure container instances, a brand new service called Azure Container Apps, which allows you to build all languages, but also very much Go into a container and run it serverlessly and have it scale out and not have to worry about things like running a cluster. It's very much that gap, filling that space between I've got something that wants to run as a function, which also supports Go, sort of a serverless function, but before you have to sort of go to a Kubernetes cluster. So it fills that serverless Go space, which I'm very, very excited about. And I would say that's probably the service I'd recommend to the day-to-day Go developer building APIs and that sort of stuff. And then we also have all of the collateral open source focused projects as well, like Postgres. We have managed Postgres services and all of the other things that Gophers would expect. But inside of Microsoft, we have many teams both building these services. So all of our cloud native services are built using a lot of Go, millions and millions of lines of Go into AKS, Azure Kubernetes service, go into all of our container-based services, our supporting things like that. Aaron has worked on a bunch of different things since joining Microsoft and could tell many stories about all of those things over the arc of time.
Yes.
Many open source projects. So we have a lot of Go developers inside of Microsoft who contribute to upstream to open source projects in the Kubernetes ecosystem. So straightforward vanilla upstream Kubernetes, but also other projects in the CNCF, which we'll probably talk about briefly, as well as other open source tools that support the cloud as well. And then you have developers inside of Microsoft who are working on the core of, let's say, Azure, like in Azure networking or in other core parts of Azure that run the entirety of our cloud. They often they're sometimes full-time on Go that supports the cloud as a whole. So Go is very much the language of the cloud, and we have lots of Gophers across that spectrum working on things like that. Then even to the left and the right of the cloud, we have teams working on things like the Microsoft Authentication Library, or MSAL for Go, which has been newly released, which would let Go developers build things against all of the Microsoft Graph APIs. So you might have things inside of M365, Microsoft 365, such as emails and calendars and identity things. All of the stuff that you could glue together with Go using services and CLIs, and that also is driven by Go, is accessible from Go now via the new SDKs and so forth. So it spans pretty much everything Microsoft uses or builds, and you can never sort of go too far without finding a team that is actually using Go for something, which is really, really fantastic in my view.
So we've got the core of the cloud.
Yep.
We've got the community. We've got open source that we work on. We've got cloud products like AKS and container apps. We've got SDKs. I think I'm at 5 things now. We've got.
Don't forget VMs, by the way. I was going to say VMs as well, because if you look at the last Go survey, Go developer survey, you'll see a large number of Go developers who come and use Go on our cloud and inside of Azure. They use VMs. So there's a lot of enterprises, a lot of people who are just using technologies that they know and are battle tested for them, and they're using Go. So it brings together the tried and true and the battle tested with what is sometimes new to a lot of people from the Go perspective. So just to drop that in there.
Yeah. So Go is being used on all these different kind of, in all these different contexts inside of the company and outside, of course. Yeah. And this is all, been people choosing the best tool for the job, which is really great. I mean, that speaks well to the technology and the community. But another thing that we both sort of mentioned is that we at Microsoft, we participate a lot in that community as well. So, we have chosen Go in a lot of cases because it's got such a robust community for the cloud and for cloud technologies. But also we've given a lot back and we've participated a lot in the Go community as well. A lot of times in the form of open source, right?
Yeah. And I'll take the example of one of our most successful open source projects in terms of breadth and reach, which is now inside the CNCF, Dapper, the distributed application runtime. This was something that was built inside of the Azure Incubations group, inside of Mark Krasinovich, the CTO of Azure's team, and they chose Go for it, and naturally because of the community and all the other things. But it's something that more and more engineers, both inside of Microsoft and collaborating with engineers in the community outside of Microsoft, have worked on. So there are several projects like this, particularly Cloud Native and CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation projects, which are both Microsoft and community driven, and often primarily, community developed and driven. I'd like to call out one because we have the maintainer here. So Aaron Schlesinger, creator and maintainer of the Kada HTTP add-on. So Kada is a very successful project, it's also CNCF. It came out of our serverless teams inside of Microsoft. It's Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, and allows you to build applications that scale according to events of various sources, from queues and many, many different event types across clouds, across vendors, across open source and managed platforms. And it scales out your workloads according to these events that are happening and the volume that you need to process natively on top of Kubernetes, which can be hosted anywhere in any cloud on premises and all of that sort of thing. And one of the things that was missing from this project was the ability to scale according to HTTP traffic coming in. So if you're building an API or you're building a web service and you want that to auto scale on a Kubernetes cluster, this is what the Kada HTTP add-on does. And it brings us very important functionality to Kada. So I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit about that, Aaron.
Yeah. So obviously, AKS is a really important service for Azure, and obviously there's a lot of people using it. So we've invested a lot. Azure itself has invested a lot in the Kubernetes community and ecosystem. So you mentioned Kada. One of the reasons for Kada is one of the reasons it was started actually was there was no great way to hook up Kubernetes auto scaling. Then there's a built-in thing in Kubernetes called the horizontal pod autoscaler. There was no easy way at the time to hook that up to external services like your cloud services, like Redis, like NATS, which is like a messaging system, an open source messaging system, like Kafka, like RabbitMQ. And Kada was started to be like the best way to hook up all those external systems in a Kubernetes native way to your workload. So, like you mentioned, Aaron, Kata, the core Kata project didn't have support to hook up HTTP services in those events to your workloads. So the result was, you had to wire up a ton of stuff yourself. You almost had to just basically be an expert in Kata to do this yourself. So the point of this HTTP add-on project is to provide a lot of plumbing, a lot of convenience operator functionality, and a standard Kubernetes native interface to Kata to make it so you can deploy a standard Kubernetes web service. So a deployment on Kubernetes along with a service on Kubernetes. So, you learn 2 Kubernetes concepts, you deploy those, and then in the Kubernetes native way, you tell the Kata HTTP add-on that, hey, I've got this HTTP service running now. Please do all the work that is needed to get Kata, the core Kata, to scale my service up and down based on the HTTP traffic that I get. So, this thing saves a lot of work. It saves sometimes thousands of lines of YAML and a lot of debugging. And it gives you an experience, an operational experience over the lifetime of your application that's a lot smoother. You can debug things a lot more easily. You can scale all the way down to 0. So if you've got no traffic, you can have your app running with no replicas, spending no money on compute infrastructure. And you can scale up from 0 a lot more quickly than any of the other sort of options that you have with just Kata core. So this is a fairly young project. It's about a year old. It's in its 2nd beta release. And it's growing. It's growing very quickly. We're looking for folks. If anyone is interested in this kind of technology, please reach out and we'll put the link to it in the chat. Let me actually do that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're looking to use it, we'd love to talk with people interested in using it. And as a Go developer, I'm very excited about building very scalable microservices, just having my my web server, I containerize it, put it on Kubernetes and have it scale down to 0, scale out, be able to run more microservices at a higher density and have things that can scale very, very significantly. But we're also looking for contributors as well. So if you have ideas for features and use cases and thoughts, this is a very open, welcoming project. Aaron is also leading it. This is initiated out of our team. And I have to say, Aaron's one of the best people to introduce you to an open source project like that. So from a maintainer perspective, if you have ideas and you want to hack on something in Go on an open source project, which is going to get a lot of use and is, has a lot of support and maintenance, you'd be welcome to come and we'll introduce you to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aaron also has previously worked on other open source projects at Microsoft that we've sort of initiated or built, some primarily for the community. One was Athens.
Well, let's get to, just sorry to interrupt. Engin has had a question for a while. Are we writing the cross-plane provider? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer for that. I do know originally the open application model that we initiated, I think it was, I'm losing track of years, but I think it's 2018 or 2019, I forget. That was very much involved in the cross-plane work as well. And a lot of that migrated to cross-plane from a provider perspective. But I don't know exactly who is maintaining on that side of things, but I can definitely look into that and reach out to you. As Engin also mentioned, the Azure Service Operator for Kubernetes is also in Go, built from Microsoft. Yes. And
yeah, and if it's Kubernetes and it's Azure related, it's a good bet that it's Go, and it's a good bet that we were involved with it. Not just me and Aaron, but Azure. Someone in the Azure organization was involved with it. We Azure, particularly the AKS team and the advocacy group, are really heavily invested in Kubernetes. So Azure Service Operator, Cluster API provider for Azure.
Other projects like Orchestra.
Orchestra.
Open Policy Agent.
Open Policy Agent, Gatekeeper. What else do we have? we're involved with
Porter, Helm, of
Kubernetes
course.
itself. Yeah,
you came
Helm.
to Microsoft via the acquisition of Deis, which is the maintainers and creators of Helm. So that's definitely something we work on. Porter is another very fun open source project we're actually hiring for as well. So for people who want to work in Go in the open source, there are various roles inside of Microsoft where you can write Go all day long and do all that kind of thing as well. And we have we're hiring lots of Gophers across all of these teams. And if you go to that link, the aka.ms/GopherCon-2021, you'll see there's a job section, shows all different teams and all different hiring managers and other people building and working on all of those things. So we're hiring Gophers at that at quite a clip as well to work on all of these open source projects. Brigade is another one. So we've mentioned Dapper and Porter. All of these sort of things. We have other projects as well, which are maintained and built by people at Microsoft, some that are official, some that are just outside, but still supporting products like Playwright Go, which is a library for automating the browser using the Playwright library, the Playwright framework. So that's a lot of fun. There are lots of things you can do that are even outside of the Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystems too.
Yeah, I mean, let's go into that a little bit, because Kubernetes, it's in Kubernetes and cloud native is a huge application of Go. Yeah, it's where Go grew up. But there's some things outside. You mentioned Playwright. Using Go to automate the browser is it's a novel thing. It's not been done before. It's definitely, we're learning from the community on how the community chooses to use Go to automate a browser, to do browser testing or front-end tests or whatever they might choose.
And this was something we actually maintained. So the maintainer of Playwright Go was just building this out in the open, and we hired them to the Playwright team, and they work on multiple languages as well. But they were building this and they had specific use cases. So Playwright is not just necessarily for testing. It's as a developer who just wants to automate a browser, automate multiple browsers, etc. You might want to go out there and pull data which needs to be made open. Now, there's also open data out there which is not available in formats that are maybe easily consumable. You need it in a specific format so you can stream it out or build an API or make something more scalable. Or you might have something in a local developer workflow. You just need a little tool which does this with the browser and pulls things together. Or it might be a full testing pipeline and that kind of thing. And Go is a great language for all of these things, from the sort of the glue code right down to, I'm building this big testing pipeline to test my very complex, maybe an e-commerce application or something like that. Yeah. So it's very exciting to make all of that accessible.
Another one outside of the cloud native ecosystem, I cut you off before.
No worries.
When you started talking about this, it was Athens. Tell us a little bit about that. We only have 2 minutes, but tell us as quickly as you can.
I'll tell you two things. So when Go modules came along, we worked on a project called Athens. Aaron led it and created it, so maybe you should be telling us about it. But this is a fantastic project. We launched at GopherCon 2018, if I'm remembering right. Yep. 2018. Also mixed of 2017, and it provides an open source Go modules proxy for Go, so that you can have this inside of the firewall. You can have all your private modules inside of Athens. It has various options for backends. You can host it on premises. You can host it in the cloud. You can contribute to it. You can improve it. It's all community first. And it's been used by a lot of different organizations, from the New York Times. At one time, the Go team was using it, and others. AWS, Uber. So it's a really community first, vendor neutral project. We're actually also looking for maintainers as well. So if you want to see a mature project which you'd like to contribute to in the Go community, and you enjoy things in this space and enjoy giving back to the community, absolutely reach out to Aaron or myself. And I'd love to introduce you to it and talk about the kind of things that might bring it into the next phase of its maturity. It's fantastic. So that's just another example of a community first, even not necessarily at all cloud related application of Go. Of course, we do a lot of things. Sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going, please.
One thing I will just say, for all of you who are here on the live stream right now, we have both a cloud native Go lab, a Go with GitHub Actions Go lab, and a serverless container Go lab. I'd recommend peeking to all of them and seeing which one you'd like. And for everybody on the stream here, we have a special gift It's actually a GitHub gift card. You can go and grab yourself anything from maybe a sweater or some Octocats or some GitHub YubiKeys, or anything the GitHub store offers. If you complete these, you'll end up hopping on our Go open source Discord, doing one of these labs, and sharing it back to us, and we'll send you a gift card for GitHub. It's at aka.ms/go-labs. And if you'd like to talk,
your prize for staying till the end of the stream.
yes. Or even maybe if you haven't, if you see this a little bit late and they're still available, you'll still be able to do that. But we'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's from the community who's shown up today. And we'd love to chat with you more on the Discord there. It's the Microsoft open source Discord, aka.ms/open-source-discord. We'd love to demo and chat about all things Go. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
We'll put the link for the Discord in there in the chat in case you missed that. aka.ms/open-source-discord.
And we appreciate all your questions. Now, we didn't get to them all, but we hope you will do another one of these sometime very soon. It's great to see the response.
Engin, I think a link is going to pop in there. That's the Go Labs link. Let's see if we can get the open source Discord link in there.
The open source Discord is in the Go Labs as well.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah. I'll echo what Aaron said. Thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope that we can do one of these again too. That'd be fun.
Fantastic. Cool. Thank you very much.
Well, till next time then.
Cheers.
Bye everybody.